How to cast a mouth sculpture. Video by Vladimir London. In this video, I will demonstrate how to build a mold and cast a mouth sculpture in resin plaster. Here's the mouth model we'll get by the end. I sculpted this mouth model in plastiline in one of the previous videos. The description includes a link to that video. I can now use this wax clay model to make molds. To keep silicone from clinging to the wooden board, I apply a thin layer of release agent on it. Make sure that such a product does not include sulfur, which prevents silicone hardening. I use a brush to apply this waxy substance. There is no need to cover the entire board, only the areas closest to the model. I also use the same releasing agent to lubricate the entire sculpture. Although silicone is unlikely to permanently adhere to plastiline, I should spread it to facilitate separation. To avoid apparent brush strokes on the model surface, cover as thinly as possible. The following step is to prepare the silicone. I'll weigh it precisely because a mistake might cause silicone hardening issues. This silicone has two parts that must be blended in equal amounts by weight or volume. It is better to measure with some accurate scales. This one has 1/10 of gram accuracy. The component lay is clear, so I place it first in the measuring cup. Part B has to be added in the same weight or volume. It's green, which was presumably done by the manufacturer to distinguish between components A and B. I measure the same weight as before, thus the mixing ratio is 1:1. Pouring must be done precisely because I do not want to exceed the required amount, since pouring back this material is not feasible. There are many various brands of silicone on the market. If you have some preferences, leave your comments below this video to share your favorite. I will mix 2 parts of silicone for several minutes. Make sure to scrape the bottom and sides of the container with a stick, since unmixed liquid will never solidify. This silicone dries not as fast as other brands, so I have plenty of time to intermix it as good as I can without worrying that it will harden soon. I'll apply mixed silicone using the same brush I used for the release agent. It's a low-cost synthetic brush that can be cleaned with a paper towel and turpentine. A 1/2-inch broad sheet of silicone wraps around the figure on the board. It does not need to be any broader. This type of silicone is rather liquid. It is simple to use. It also hardens slowly, giving you ample time to apply a thin coat. As far as I can tell, this tin silicone is designed for pouring rather than brushing on. However, the manufacturer does not offer much information other than the mixing ratio. Anyway, I believe it will be adequate for mold creation. The purpose of the first layer is to cover the whole model surface with no gaps or bubbles. It is preferable to use liquid silicone very thinly, especially for the first layer. I'll build up the mold thickness by coating the model with multiple layers of silicone once the initial layer is touch dry. Each layer must dry before proceeding to the next. It is critical not to over-dry the silicone, since the next coat will not adhere. I'll also add a thickening agent because this silicone is too liquid. Tin silicone will increase in viscosity and form a paste rather than a liquid in this manner. Here's another model of a mouth sculpted in monster clay. It is already covered in release agent and appears glossy for that matter. As previously, I start brushing the first layer of silicone thinly, first covering the wooden board around the clay model. Then, I apply a thin layer on top of the model, making sure that no air bubbles trap beneath the rubber. The reason I have two mouth sculptures is because each is sculpted in a different way. We teach these methods to Life Drawing Academy students in the Correspondence course. Such sculptures are used as models to draw from life in that course. The Life Drawing Academy Correspondence course is one of the best drawing courses available today on the internet. Every student gets a dedicated art teacher and personal drawing curriculum that is tailored to students' level of skills and needs. In this course, we guarantee that you will get the advanced level of drawing skills should you follow all 100 drawing tasks with required quality. Every task will be explained and demonstrated in depth. You will also receive constructive critique on every drawing you make in this course, together with advice on how to improve it and fix mistakes. If you are serious about getting strong drawing skills, watch a video about the Life Drawing Academy Correspondence course. Also, to see what this academy is about, check out its free demo video lessons. After the soft silicone mold has dried completely, I can cut off 4 sides, leaving around 8 mm of the shoulders on the board. I use a metal ruler and a very sharp scalpel for this. The scalpel effortlessly slides through the 3 mm thick silicone covering. I didn't build it up thickly because the model's design is basic and a strong mold isn't required. The release agent performs well, and it is very easy to remove fragments of silicone from the wooden board. Now I'd want to put this silicone's mechanical characteristics to the test. Let's see how far it can stretch before breaking. I can easily expand 2 cm into 8, which is very good. I'll apply a touch of release agent to the wooden board before making the hard mold to keep the gypsum from clinging to it. It is possible to accomplish this with a brush or even fingertips. I'll use gypsum bandages to make a hard mold. I'll start by cutting the plaster band into smaller pieces. Gypsum bandages are lightweight and ideal for small to medium-sized molds. I dip 1 piece of plaster band into water for approximately 2 seconds, allowing the water to drip off it before folding it in half. Folding is required to obtain more gypsum per square inch. Then I place that piece on the model, softly pushing it to avoid air bubbles beneath. The hard mold will be divided into 2 halves. That's why I start with the central line of symmetry. The gypsum fabric hardens quickly, so I have about a minute to arrange it in the shape I want. The following piece is wet and folded in half, much like the previous one. To add thickness, I'll overlap the first layer. Every subsequent gypsum bandage must overlap the preceding layer by at least 1 centimeter. Because of the modest size of this model, the hard mold can be rather thin. For layers of fabric are formed by folding 2 layers of bandages in half. However, when the following bandages overlap, there are 8 layers overall, which is more than enough for the purpose of this mold. I use a paper towel to absorb any extra water. Making models of facial features as well as sculptures of a skull and head is a great way of learning human head and face proportions and construction. This knowledge is very much needed when it comes to drawing portraits from life, memory, and imagination. That is why we teach students in the Life Drawing Academy Correspondence course not only how to draw figures and portraits, but also how to make sculptures that can be used as models to draw from. You may notice that the border between 2 mold parts is not straight, but has some irregular bits, which will act as keys, so the mold can be assembled with precision without 2 parts moving along each other. The first half of the hard mold is completed and dried. It is preferable to let it dry for a few days or at least overnight before proceeding. Now comes the important step. I need to cover the gypsum edge with the release agent to avoid 2 pieces of the hard mold from fusing into an inseparable unit. I use the brush to do it thoroughly. I'll cut additional gypsum bandage pieces for the second portion of the hard mold. It is preferable to cut numerous pieces beforehand rather than handling the bandage roll with moist hands later. The application of bandages is a straightforward process. I soak the piece, let the excess water drip off, and fold the cloth in half. To create a thicker border between 2 mold portions, I fold the edge again and push it against the first part. 2 mold sections will be joined together to form one sturdy unit that is easy to take apart. I will continue adding plaster bandage pieces until all the rest of this model is covered in 2 layers. I can disassemble the mold once it has dried. It is preferable to wait at least 24 hours before doing so. As you can see, the hard mold has a thickness of around 3 mm, which is almost the same as the soft mold. The rigid mold is both strong and light. 2 pieces joined together without any gap and irregular border between them helps to assemble parts nicely. I can now remove the soft mold. It easily peels away from the wax clay model. As you can see, this silicone mold is incredibly thin. It is merely 2 mm in some spots. It's also quite soft. That is why a hard mold is required to keep its shape. The soft mold precisely fits within the hard one. The second model is also disassembled. Two parts of the hard mold fit each other with precision. The second silicone mold also peeled away. It fits the hard mold as comfortably as a hand inside the glove. For cold casting, the hard mold has to be leveled horizontally. To make it easier, I will use sand. This sand bed can keep the mold in any position I will put it. Using sand is optional, you may find other solutions for that purpose. I'll wrap the mold with masking tape to keep the two pieces together. This tape is more than enough for this job. Alternatively, you may use some rubber bands or clinging film instead of masking tape. Here's how sand helps to keep the mold level. I'll create a wire hook before casting. A model might be hung on the wall using this hook. Making such a hook is entirely optional. Nonetheless, I'll show you how to place it into the model. For cold casting, I will use fill ceramic white powder. It has 7-minute mixing time, 30-minute hardening time, and can be demolded in 1 hour. This bag contains 3 kilos of this ceramic plaster. It's white, fine, and tough. I'll need a measuring cup and scales for the following step because plaster and water can be measured by weight. Only the front side of this sculpture will be cast in fill ceramic because this material has premium quality, and I do not want to waste it. The back side of this model will be cast in cheap plaster. The mixing ratio is stated on the bag and I will follow it precisely to get the best results. In the mixing pot, I first add water. The amount is measured by weight. Then, I will add plaster powder into water. The key point here is that dry powder should be added into water, not the other way around. I add plaster little by little, letting it to soak and absorb water. I mix plaster and water with the palette knife. A spoon can be used for this purpose. When mixing, I need to ensure that the mix is homogeneous and free of dry lumps. The mixture is liquid enough to be poured straight to the mold. This needs to be done with care, not to trap any air bubbles underneath. The next step is to distribute the plaster mix evenly throughout the silicone mold, making sure it covers the entire surface without trapping any air bubbles. Because of its cream-like consistency, plaster flows nicely, especially when I shake the mold slightly. I must ensure that plaster extends all the way to the top edge. Of course, it is completely possible to make enough plaster to fill in the entire model. However, I'd want to demonstrate another method in which you may use a little amount of high-quality material, such as this fill ceramic plaster, for the model's surface and fill in the remainder with inexpensive plaster. The model's quality would be the same since you would be getting nice material on its surface, but the cost will be reduced because basic gypsum is around 10 times cheaper than high-quality resin. So, this model is cast in 2 materials, expensive ceramic outside and cheap plaster inside. A palette knife can be used to smooth up the back surface of this sculpture. Now, I will insert the wire hook. By the way, before sticking the hook, make sure it's on the proper side and not upside down. The surface can be smoothed up with the palette knife once again. While the first sculpture is hardening, I can cast another one. As previously, I assembled two parts of the hard mold and taped them together. The soft silicone mold goes inside the hard one. It sits perfectly well without any fixing. A wire hook is prepared for this sculpture as well. I check its size, making sure it fits well inside the mold. For the second sculpture, I will be using different materials. Aqua resin is another high-quality plaster, which is white, hard, and scratch-resistant. Also, I will mix this resin with finest marble dust. Here's the sample I prepared earlier to test aqua resin qualities. It is very white and glossy. It resembles polished marble or very hard plastic. Marble dust will reduce its gloss finish. It is very hard, I can't scratch it even with a metal tool. It's time to prepare the mix. To begin with, I measure marble dust. It is genuine marble grinded into very fine powder. I don't think they produce any finer marble dust than that. Then, I add water into marble to wet it. Because it is not plaster, it doesn't matter how to do it, adding water into powder or powder into water. After 20 or so minutes, when marble dust sinks to the bottom, all excess water should be poured out. Now, I can measure with precision the amount of water needed for resin. Aqua resin is also added by weight. This time, it is crucial to add plaster into water, not the other way around. I'm using a spoon for mixing resin and marble dust with water. It has to be done thoroughly. Once again, the sand bowl is used to position the mold horizontally. The mix is poured into one place on the bottom of this bowl. It is important to pour it into one spot, it helps to avoid air trapping. I do it slowly and accurately. Now, the mold can be shaken and tilted slightly, so this mixture of resin can be distributed evenly inside the mold. It will take some time for resin to harden. I will rotate the mold all that time before it dries. As previously, this sculpture will be cast as a composite of two kinds of plaster, high-quality resin outside and cheap plaster inside. You can see that resin hardens little by little and becomes more viscous. When it hardens, it's time to prepare the second part of plaster. I mix it with a spoon and use this spoon to fill in the mold. Of course, it is easy to make this plaster more liquid, but I want it to be strong, and for that purpose less water is required. The back surface of this sculpture can be smoothed up with the palette knife. Before plaster sets, I will insert the wire hook. When plaster hardens more, but not totally dry, it is time to drill a small hole around the hook to make room for a screw head or a wire. For this, I use metal sculpting tools. These two sculptures were drying for a couple of days. Now, it's time to disassemble them. I take off masking tape. Two parts of the hard mold are disjoining rather easily. This is because this mold has no undercuts that would prevent taking gypsum halves apart. Now, the moment of revealing the finished sculpture. Soft silicone slides away and the sculpture is better than I would hope for. It is white, non-glossy, very hard, pleasant on touch, and holds every tiny detail of the original clay model, including my signature. This is a really good sculpture that can be used as a model of the mouth to draw it from life. The second mold is also disassembling nicely, without any damage to the cast sculpture. Once again, this sculpture is pleasant to look at and has everything I could wish for a model. It has all of the original wax clay model's minute features, including my signature and date. The surface is firm and smooth. It will be even whiter when totally dry. It's a fantastic addition to my sculpture collection. Here are a few examples of models we teach students how to make and draw in the Life Drawing Academy Correspondence course.
We created the Life Drawing Academy courses for students like you. Now you can study how to draw realistic portraits and figures from life, memory, and imagination in a fast and easy way. There are two courses at this academy. The online course, a self-study course where you can learn figurative drawing by watching 52 video lessons, and the Correspondence Course, where you will get unlimited personal tutoring from the talented fine artists and professional art teachers. The personal tutoring course is suitable for both complete beginners and advanced artists because you will get a drawing curriculum designed for your level of skills. In this course, in addition to video lessons, you will get 100 drawing tasks that will be explained and demonstrated in depth. There is no way to fail because the Academy tutors will walk you all the way, step by step, until you achieve an advanced level of drawing skills. This personal tutoring is unique. It will cover all drawing topics that you need to know: how to hold and use a pencil, how to draw in perspective, how to use constructive drawing principles, golden proportions, anatomy, rules of composition, and so on. No art college would ever give you such a custom-designed curriculum and unlimited tutoring for a one-time low fee. To see if this academy is right for you, check the free demo video lessons from the online course at https://lifedrawing.academy/free.